Nathan met Lily when they were both in college, young and full of dreams. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when he first saw her, standing by the university library, her auburn hair catching the golden sunlight. She was talking to a friend, laughing at something Nathan couldn't hear. But that laughter, it did something to him. It wasn't the kind of feeling he expected. It wasn't just attraction. It was like the world stopped for a moment, just long enough for him to realize that she was the one he'd been waiting for. Even if he hadn't known he was waiting, he wasn't the type to approach strangers, but something about Lily pulled him in. They struck up a conversation over something mundane, a book they had both read, and from there, things just clicked. There were no awkward silences or forced laughter, only easy conversation that felt like it had been going on for years. It wasn't long before they were spending almost every day together, studying in the library, grabbing coffee between classes, and taking long walks around the campus, talking about their hopes and fears, their passions and their futures. Lily was a dreamer, always thinking about the future, always full of energy and life. She wanted to travel the world, write stories that would inspire people, and live life to the fullest. Nathan, on the other hand, was more practical. He was studying engineering and wanted to settle down, get a good job, and build a stable life. But despite their differences, they fit together perfectly. Nathan grounded Lily, and Lily pushed Nathan to dream bigger, to look beyond the boundaries he had set for himself. They had their share of challenges, as all relationships do, but nothing ever felt too big to overcome. Their love was strong, the kind that made every day feel brighter, every moment richer. It wasn't long before Nathan knew, deep down, that Lily was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. 3 years after they first met, Nathan decided it was time to ask Lily to marry him. It was summer, and they had just graduated. Life was wide open in front of them, full of possibilities. Nathan had saved up for months to buy her the perfect ring. It wasn't extravagant, but it was elegant, something he knew Lily would love because it was simple, like the love they shared. He planned a weekend getaway to the coast, where the two of them could escape the pressures of the real world and just enjoy being together. The sun was setting when Nathan got down on one knee, his heart pounding as he looked up at her. He didn't need to give a long speech. He knew she felt the same way he did. He simply said, "Lily, I love you more than anything. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Lily just stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Then a smile spread across her face, and tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Nathan. Yes, 1,000 times yes." They spent the rest of the weekend in bliss, talking about their future, planning the life they would build together. Nathan felt like the luckiest man in the world. He had Lily, the woman he loved more than anything, and they were going to spend their lives together. He couldn't imagine anything ever coming between them, but life has a way of changing in the blink of an eye. Just a few months later, on a rainy night in late October, everything changed. Nathan had been working late that evening, finishing up a project for his new job, and Lily had offered to come pick him up from the office. He told her it wasn't necessary and that he could take a cab. But Lily insisted. She always loved driving in the rain, she said. It was calming to her. So Nathan agreed. As she drove to pick him up, the roads were slick from the rain. Visibility was low, and the weather had worsened throughout the evening. When Nathan's phone rang, and it wasn't Lily but a voice he didn't recognize, dread filled his chest. "There's been an accident," the voice said. "Your fiancée, she's been taken to the hospital." Nathan's world went numb. His heart stopped as he rushed to the hospital, his mind racing, fearing the worst. Every second felt like an eternity, and when he finally arrived, he was greeted by a doctor with a somber expression, the kind of look no one ever wants to see. Lily had been in a car crash. A truck, unable to stop on the slick roads, had swerved and collided with her car head-on. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, Lily didn't make it. She passed away just a few hours after the accident. The world, which had once been so full of life and promise, came crashing down around Nathan. The woman he had planned to spend forever with was gone, ripped away from him in an instant. He couldn't comprehend it. It felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. In one moment, everything had been perfect. In the next, everything had been destroyed. The days that followed were a blur of grief and disbelief. Friends and family came to support him, but their words felt hollow, unable to reach the depths of his pain. The funeral was unbearable. Nathan stood by Lily's casket, unable to believe that this was real. How could she be gone? They had just been planning their wedding. They were supposed to spend the rest of their lives together. How could everything have changed so quickly? The next few months were the hardest of Nathan's life. Every day he woke up expecting to see Lily beside him, expecting to hear her laughter or feel her warmth. But every morning he was met with the crushing realization that she was gone. The house they had just moved into felt empty and lifeless. Everything reminded him of her, the books she loved, the photos they had taken, and the clothes she had left behind. It was as if her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. Nathan couldn't bear it. He quit his job, unable to focus on anything but his grief. His friends tried to pull him out of the darkness, but he pushed them away. He didn't want to be around anyone. How could anyone understand what he was feeling? How could anyone know the pain of losing the love of your life? The first year passed in a fog. Every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary without Lily felt like another stab to his heart. He visited her grave every week, sitting by the headstone for hours, talking to her as if she could hear him. He'd tell her about his day, about how much he missed her, about how he didn't know how to go on without her. Sometimes he'd bring her flowers, but each time he left, he felt the same emptiness. Time, they say, heals all wounds. But for Nathan, time didn't heal anything. It simply dulled the pain, turned it into a quiet ache that lived in his chest, ever present but not as sharp. 10 years had passed since Lily's accident, but not a day went by when he didn't think of her. The memories of their time together were etched into his heart, and no matter how much time passed, he couldn't let go of the love he had for her. Nathan eventually went back to work, finding solace in routine. He moved into a smaller apartment, unable to stay in the house they had shared. But even in the new place, Lily's presence lingered. He kept a framed photo of her on his bedside table, one from a trip they had taken to the beach. Her smile in the picture was so full of life, so full of joy. Sometimes he'd look at it and feel like she was still with him, just out of reach. He never dated again. People told him that he needed to move on, that Lily wouldn't want him to live in the past, but Nathan couldn't bring himself to open his heart to anyone else. It wasn't that he didn't want to find love again. It was that, in his heart, Lily was still there. She was still his fiancée. He was still hers. How could he love someone else when Lily still held his heart? Over the years, Nathan poured himself into his work and hobbies, filling his time with anything that could distract him from the silence. He volunteered at local charities, traveled to the places Lily had always wanted to go, and even learned to play the piano, something Lily had always wanted to teach him. But no matter where he went or what he did, there was always that lingering emptiness. One day, nearly 10 years after Lily's death, Nathan was cleaning out an old box of belongings he had kept from their time together. It was a box he hadn't opened in years, tucked away in the back of his closet. As he sifted through the old photos and keepsakes, his fingers brushed against a small folded piece of paper. Curious, Nathan unfolded it and found that it was a letter written in Lily's handwriting. It was dated just a few weeks before her accident. As he began to read, tears filled his eyes. The letter wasn't long, but it was filled with the warmth and love that had always defined Lily. It read, "My dearest Nathan, I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just want to put my thoughts down somewhere. I've been thinking a lot about us lately, about how much I love you and how lucky I feel to have you in my life. You make me happier than I ever thought I could be. And I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always love you. I know life is unpredictable, and we can't control what happens to us. But I believe that love, real love, doesn't end just because life gets in the way. Even if something happens to me, Nathan, I want you to know that I will always be with you. I will always love you. And I want you to be happy, Nathan. I want you to live your life fully, even if I'm not around. Don't hold back because of me. Love is endless, and I want you to feel that love, no matter what." Nathan read the letter over and over again, his heart breaking and healing all at once. It was as if Lily had known somehow that she wouldn't be with him forever. But she had wanted him to find happiness, to move forward with his life, even if she couldn't be there by his side. For the first time in years, Nathan allowed himself to truly grieve, not just for the loss of Lily, but for the future they had been robbed of. And yet, as he held that letter in his hands, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, and that was peace. In the months that followed, Nathan carried Lily's words with him. He visited her grave, as he always did, but this time it felt different. This time he spoke to her, not with sorrow or regret, but with love and gratitude. He thanked her for the time they had shared, for the love they had built, and for the way she had changed his life. Nathan knew he would never stop loving Lily. That love would always be a part of him, woven into the fabric of who he was. But slowly he began to realize that loving Lily didn't mean he had to close himself off to the world. He could hold on to the memories of her while still allowing himself to experience new ones. He started to open his heart again, little by little. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the weight of his grief still pressed down on him. But Nathan knew that Lily's love had given him strength, and she had wanted him to live fully. A year after finding Lily's letter, Nathan met someone new. Her name was Claire. She wasn't like Lily, and Nathan never wanted her to be. The first time he saw Claire, it wasn't love at first sight, nor was there a dramatic moment where everything clicked. Meeting Claire was more like a quiet breeze, a gentle reminder that life could still hold new beginnings, even after such profound loss. Nathan wasn't looking for love when he met Claire. He was simply trying to move forward, one step at a time. They crossed paths at a local bookstore, a place Nathan had started visiting regularly after rediscovering his love for reading. The shop's comforting smell of old pages and quiet ambiance had become his haven, a place where he could lose himself in the stories of others and forget, just for a little while, the empty spaces in his heart. Claire was behind the counter that day, with her soft brown hair pulled back into a ponytail and her blue eyes focused as she worked through a stack of books to organize. Nathan didn't think much of her at first. She seemed nice, sure, but his heart wasn't looking for attachment. He was still holding on to Lily, still letting go of the dream they had once shared. But Claire noticed him. Over the next few weeks, as Nathan visited the bookstore more frequently, Claire began to strike up small conversations. She asked him about the books he was buying, offered recommendations, and, over time, their conversations grew longer. She had a way of making people feel comfortable, a warmth in her presence that Nathan hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, after talking for what seemed like hours about their favorite authors, Claire invited Nathan for coffee at the cafe next door. Nathan hesitated. He hadn't been on a date since Lily, and even the thought of it made him feel like he was betraying her memory. But something about Claire's gentle approach made him say yes. The coffee date wasn't anything grand or romantic. It was just two people sitting across from each other, sharing stories about their lives. Claire told Nathan about her childhood, her love for literature, and how she had ended up working at the bookstore after leaving her corporate job in marketing. Nathan found himself talking about Lily, about the accident, and about how hard it had been to move on. He braced himself for the usual discomfort that people felt when he mentioned his grief. Most people tried to change the subject or offered awkward platitudes, but Claire didn't. She didn't look away or try to lighten the conversation. Instead, she listened, truly listened, without judgment or pity. "I can't imagine what that's like," she said softly after Nathan finished sharing his story. "But I'm really glad you told me." There was something in the way she said it, so genuine and understanding, that Nathan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't that he had found someone to replace Lily, but rather he had found someone who understood that he didn't need to. Nathan and Claire took things slowly. He wasn't ready to dive into a new relationship, and Claire respected that. She never pushed him to move faster than he was comfortable with, and in return, Nathan found himself relaxing around her in a way he hadn't expected. They spent time together in simple ways, by walking through the park, visiting art galleries, or by just sitting quietly in the bookstore and reading side by side. Claire never tried to fill the spaces in Nathan's life that Lily had once occupied. Instead, she simply made room for herself, carving out her own place in his heart with patience and compassion. Nathan was cautious. Even as their connection grew, he held back, unsure of how to navigate the complex emotions that came with loving someone new, while still holding on to someone he had lost. But Claire never demanded more from him than he was ready to give. She understood that Nathan's heart was still healing, and she gave him the space he needed to figure things out at his own pace. Over time, Nathan began to realize that his heart was capable of holding more than one kind of love. His love for Lily would always be there, but that didn't mean he couldn't make room for Claire. Slowly, without even realizing it, he began to open up to her, allowing their bond to deepen. One evening after they had been seeing each other for several months, Nathan invited Claire over for dinner. It was the first time he had invited her to the apartment, the first time he felt ready to let her into that part of his life. As they sat together at the table, laughing and talking, Nathan realized that something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, he felt happy. It wasn't the same happiness he had felt with Lily. It wasn't the same overwhelming, all-consuming love, but it was a quieter, more peaceful kind of happiness. The kind that comes from knowing you're not alone, that someone is there to share your journey, no matter how complicated that journey might be. After dinner, as they sat on the couch, Claire reached out and took Nathan's hand. He didn't pull away, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was betraying Lily by holding someone else's hand. He realized that Claire wasn't trying to replace Lily. She was simply offering him a new kind of love, a love that was just as real, but different. As the months turned into years, Nathan and Claire's relationship deepened. They built a life together, but it was always clear that Lily's memory was a part of Nathan's heart, and Claire respected that. She never felt threatened by it, and never asked Nathan to forget the past. Instead, she honored it with him, understanding that loving Lily was a part of who Nathan was. They would visit the cemetery together sometimes, where Nathan would leave flowers at Lily's grave, and Claire would stand quietly beside him, offering her silent support. It was in those moments that Nathan realized how special Claire was. There were times, of course, when Nathan struggled with the weight of his emotions. He still missed Lily deeply, and there were moments when grief would wash over him unexpectedly. On those days, Claire would hold him, not trying to fix what couldn't be fixed, but simply being there. She understood that grief wasn't something that went away. It was something you learned to live with, and she was willing to live with it by his side. Nathan also found himself growing stronger. As he continued to heal, he realized that Lily had given him so much more than heartache. She had taught him what it meant to love deeply and unconditionally. And though she was no longer physically with him, her love had never left him. It had shaped him into the person he was, and it had prepared him for this new chapter of his life with Claire. Years later, Nathan and Claire were sitting on a bench in the park, watching the sunset as they often did. The world was bathed in golden light, and the air was warm, with the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. As Nathan sat there holding Claire's hand, he thought of Lily as he often did. He still missed her. He always would. But the pain that had once been so sharp and unbearable had softened over the years. Now when he thought of Lily, it was with a sense of peace. She had been a beautiful part of his life, and he would always cherish the time they had shared. But now he had Claire. She had come into his life quietly without fanfare, and had shown him that love wasn't limited to just one moment in time. Nathan turned to Claire, smiling as she leaned her head on his shoulder. She had given him a second chance at happiness, a chance he never thought he'd have. She had shown him that it was possible to carry the love he had for Lily while still embracing a new love, one that was just as meaningful, just as real, but different. "I've been thinking," Nathan said softly, his voice breaking the comfortable silence between them, "about how lucky I am to have you." Claire lifted her head, meeting his gaze. "I'm the lucky one," she said with a smile. Nathan shook his head. "No, I mean it. You've been so patient with me. You've never pushed me to move faster than I was ready for, and I'll always be grateful for that." Claire reached out, gently cupping his cheek. "I knew from the start that you weren't looking for someone to replace Lily, and I wasn't trying to. I just wanted to be with you, Nathan." Nathan's eyes filled with emotion as he leaned forward and kissed her softly. It wasn't a kiss filled with passion or intensity. It was a kiss filled with love, the kind of love that grows slowly over time, rooted in understanding and trust. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nathan smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because he had finally found peace. He knew now that love wasn't something that disappeared with time or even with loss. Lily's love had given him strength, and Claire's love had given him hope. He didn't need to say goodbye to the past to embrace the present. Instead, he carried both loves within him, like two intertwined vines, each distinct, yet both essential. Claire had never asked him to forget Lily, and Lily, he believed, wanted him to be happy again. As they sat quietly hand in hand, Nathan felt a sense of completeness that he hadn't felt in years. His heart, once so shattered by grief, had grown strong enough to hold both sorrow and joy. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, he knew that love, in all its forms, would continue to shape his life in beautiful and unexpected ways. Nathan turned to Claire, his voice soft but certain. "I'm ready," he said, "for everything that comes next." Claire smiled, squeezing his hand, and said, "So am I." And in that moment, Nathan realized that love is not about leaving the past behind, but about embracing it as part of his journey while continuing to move forward together.